I'll first say this. I commend the league for putting out a statement. The worst thing I can do is get up here when I'm trying to get our team to turn forward to UCLA and be talking about, the calls that went against us in a loss. I think that's very forward thinking of, Commissioner Petitti and of Bill Carollo, who's the head of officiating. And I think it's what should be done. We all just want transparency in everything, right? Hey, I come here, you guys ask me what happened on this play, what happened on that play, right? And to do my best to be transparent and answer them. So I appreciate the statement. That was a game, you guys hear us talk about situational football. We're trying to master the last drive of the half, the last drive of the game. When you have one timeout and you think it's a spot, it just makes it hard to coach, right? So that was difficult, and they addressed it. And that's really all I want. I will say this, I think one of the hardest jobs in the world right now is to be an official. I grew up in an era when I played college football. I stood next to Coach Paterno. The officials went out there. They had their whistles. They threw their flags. There weren't 52 camera angles because every game's on, national TV. There weren't, they threw the flag and you live with it, right? And, Coach Paterno would yell at the officials and, just kind of that's how football was. And now you're in a world where, now we have instant replay. And the first instant replay was, to overturn the egregious stuff. And now it's more, now we can fix things. Like last week there was 3 seconds on the clock and all of a sudden, now there was 6 seconds against Indiana. So now as an official, when I'm calling the game on controversial calls as if, well, what happens if it does get overturned? So they go with, if it's close to being a fumble, they think the guy's down. They might, they're kind of instructed to call it a fumble so that the play continues and then replay can overturn it. But replay, if it's close, we'll go with the call that stood, which even though that might not be what the official thought. So the amount of things that must be in those guys' heads, God bless them, and then there are 100,000 people and they're running backwards trying to say, is it DPI, is it OPI, right? Now, it used to be the officials have to go over and talk to each other. Now they have a microphone and they're talking to each other during the game and they're confirming things. And it just, I feel for them, so I'm never going to get up here and complain about judgment calls. That's not my thing. I've been upset, or I've talked about really replay. Like last year we had 3 replays that the next day they said, hey, replay was wrong. That's hard for me, right? And it used to be replay was in your own building. You'd see the replay official before the game. He was going to go up and make the call. Now replay goes off to a central site somewhere, and it's probably the best system in the world. I just, I advocate for the players. I advocate for the coaches. I'm also going to advocate for the 8 guys out there calling the game. I'm going to sit there and give them my opinion at times. I never cross the line. I do want to say this because my daughters and, I want every person in Norfolk and Tacoma and everywhere in the state. Both times I've gotten a flag this year, the next day they said never should have been a flag. So I don't disrespect officials. I stay on the field. I coach the way I've coached the last 12 years, aggressive, but defended, and no one on my sideline talks to the officials. Officials will always tell you we're disciplined. So I appreciate the statement, but I do want to say it must be really hard to be out there making those calls. And there was a really controversial OPI in the Ohio State-Oregon game, right? And they called offensive pass interference. And so what ends up happening is, over the next couple of weeks, the officials, there's all these points of emphasis and all this stuff, and they're talking about OPI, and they're talking about OPI, and then all of a sudden we show up, and we get 2 OPIs, on the last drive of the half and on the last drive of the game. Now, you guys have watched this. I don't know how many OPIs we've had this year, offensive pass interference. But these points of emphasis, that kind of hit you each week, something happens and we change the kickoff return mechanics. As a coach, I can't change what an 18-year-old does or a 22-year-old does on 3 days' notice. We went through camp. We go through all the officiating training. Officials come to practice. We're told to do things a certain way. And then as the season goes on, as things happen, man, the officials have to adjust. Well, we have to adjust. And all of a sudden you get into a game like this and all this stuff happens. So I appreciate the transparency. I do want to make sure everyone understands where I stand, though. I advocate for the officials. I think we should let them call the game, and it shouldn't be all this. It shouldn't change as much as it does based upon this and that. We should just let them call the games and live with the result, right? Like we live with the players' result. So I appreciate that. Some tough things went against us. We've had replay go against us. We've had my penalties go against us. I don't want any more apologies on Sunday. It can't happen against UCLA. Can't happen against Iowa. These things can't happen moving forward. And so I'm very forward thinking. I appreciate, Bill. I appreciate Tony. I appreciate Troy. I appreciate everybody. But it can't keep happening to us. It needs to be fair. And that's not about the guys making judgment calls. They got a tough job. I just want to tell us what the rules are, and we'll kind of go from there. And so that's my take. I hope it's okay that I say that. But we're not going to sit here and whine about whether it was a a hold or not. During the game, I'm going to yell when they false started. I yelled, "Hey, that's a false start!" Like that's a not hold, no hold. That's a false start. But then the play is over. We play the next play, and we got to play better. Before we can worry about the officials, we need to worry about ourselves.